this pattern of unwellness is happening not just in people that have significant neurological dysfunction like I did. This is happening to all of us, and it's showing up in a variety of different ways. And we can talk about that more, but ultimately, it's the encapsulation held these toxins stored deeply, and that includes the nervous system, the brain, the vagus nerve, the brain stem in particular controls the function and featuring of the vagus nerve itself. Deeply stores of this in the liver is increasing, metabolic dysfunction in the lobes of the spleen is increasing, inflammatory and especially digestive dysfunction encapsulated in the thoracic ganglia of the body, which is affecting cardiovascular function.
What if aging isn't about slowing down, but leveling up? I'm Dr. Isaac Jones. This is the Longevity Leaders Podcast. Welcome to the Longevity Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Isaac Jones, and I'm here with my friend, Dr. Erika Schultz. She's a licensed acupuncturist, a certified applied clinical nutritionist. She also holds a doctorate in Chinese medicine and acupuncture with over 3,500 hours in biomedicine research and advanced practice. She's got a lot of amazing experience in medical integration, acupuncture theory, which you're going to have to share a little bit about what that is, point location use, Chinese herbs, and functional nutrition from two of the top-rated accredited institutes in the field. Dr. Erika began struggling with an autoimmune disease as a young girl, and for many years managed it with medications alone. And then she embarked on a career-changing experience. She essentially, went through this very stressful time in her life. Her health tanked, and she knew she needed to go beyond just the traditional medical model. And that's when she delved into functional healthcare and ancient medicine, and really what is now called foundational nutrition in order to heal herself and really set herself on a path for healing and wellness. And so, out of necessity, she's built her own system called the resiliency method. And based on this amazing methodology that's healed her body, she's now helping heal many people with chronic health conditions and really getting their life back. So, Dr. Erika, again, thank you so much. And really excited to dive in with you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, my health journey is really at the foundation of the creation of the resiliency method. And it really was born out of the fact that when I was a young person, I started having grand mal seizures. And
Wow.
those were preceded by a incident where I stepped on a rusty nail and had a tetanus shot. And shortly after that experience, I had shingles on my face as a 10-year-old kid, and they started
Wow.
taking pictures of me for medical books, all the things. So my health journey really started in childhood, quite frankly, and
Wow.
was very kind of a tumultuous one, to say the least. But as I started to unwind my health and my journey, and really came to a point where, I got to the point where I was doing the best and working with the best health care practitioners probably out there, trained this most extensively. They were able to really customize my healing plan and what I needed to move forward. And at the first phase of my healing journey, what I call kind of level one, I got great results. I started to see improvement by doing initial heavy metal clearing, detoxing some of the old childhood vaccines. Parasites was a big one. Dealing with some of those chronic infections that were hanging out, and doing more of that foundational approach. It really made a big difference for me, initially. To the point where even at one point I came off my seizure medication.
Wow.
But just shortly thereafter, within a year or so, I started having them again, and I started having more and more. And so what
So
went
the
from
medications helped a little bit to like palliatively, and then it just got worse and worse. That's typically what happens.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, as I was getting older, and what I didn't realize was that I really wasn't at the root cause quite yet with my own health. And
Yeah.
I was at this point in time, I was already, about 10 years into my clinical practice, seeing my own healing miracles with patients inside of my clinic. Really had a thriving over 100 client visits a week. I mean, I look back, we just did this data the other day. I've been in practice about 15 years. So a lot of my experience in medicine comes from clinical application of it. And in my 15 years of tenure, I've done over 40,000 visits, Isaac.
Wow.
So when
A
you're
lot.
in that much
You're an OG.
yeah, when you're in that much exchange with the human body and humans, of course, patients, clients,
Yep.
um, it really is a learning process and it really is a practice in that, every bit of encounter and information you get through your work, you learn and you start to see that, oh, there's even more to know. And that's really where I got to with my own health journey was I had reached that kind of precipice point. I had noticed that, certainly the seizures never really had changed much or for very long. I did go back on the medication. Luckily, I've always been pretty well controlled with a low dose, but it was really around, 2020 when I started to have see even more increased shifts in terms of what was going on as I was looking around. We had the pandemic come in. I started to observe and feel that the stress and the extra tension of myself of being confronted by my community of having to take this experimental vaccine. It was very frightening to me. It was very frightening to a lot of my colleagues, and I started to sort
When
of
was that? When was
that
that?
was, 2021, I guess, when that
Oh,
COVID
okay.
vaccine
Yeah,
came out,
right.
yeah. So lots of increased pressure, lots of a lot of people have had disrupted relationships with people in their lives, and that I
Yeah,
certainly wasn't an exception to that. I lost a lot of friends for taking the stance I took. But when your health history is, you know, you can observe and look back and see, oh, that there was some kind of involvement there, then it
right.
makes you real trepidatious, and especially when your symptom is that you drop down and lose complete consciousness, and you are, flailing all over arms and legs.
That's what happened when you got vaccinated the first time, right?
Well, ultimately, I didn't have seizures right away. It was really that tetanus shot that kind of threw me over the edge. But what I've uncovered in the process, and this is what the resiliency method really culminates toward, is the importance of detoxing at a deeper level of your body, and specifically encapsulated toxins, and specifically heavy metals,
And
such as,
and just real quick,
yeah, sure.
what is an encapsulated toxin?
So, an encapsulated toxin is what the body does when you get exposed to something very early on in life. Okay.
Mm,
And it stores it very deeply. Now, there's actual science out there, and in the show notes today, I'll leave a guide here for practitioners who are listening to this podcast that they can review. It gets a little bit more technical and heavy. It also covers the research where we're seeing that this is a recognized phenomena that's happening in the exposure to, especially aluminum and mercury, and especially in the form of ethyl mercury, which is what is delivered in the vaccines by way of
right.
aerosol. So I had already, I mean, I didn't know it. It wasn't like I spontaneously combusted at age 10 into having an outbreak of shingles on my face and then shortly thereafter starting to have grand mal seizures, right? It was like that tetanus
Wow.
shot was the straw that broke my camel's back. But what I've observed clinically is
Mm,
that this pattern of unwellness is happening not just in people that have significant neurological dysfunction like I did. This
right.
is happening to all of us, and it's showing up in a variety of different ways. And we can talk about that more, but ultimately, it's, the encapsulation held these toxins stored deeply, and that includes especially the nervous system, the brain, the vagus nerve, the brain stem in particular, which, controls the function and featuring of the vagus nerve itself. Deeply stores of this in the, liver, is increasing, metabolic dysfunction in the lobes of the spleen. is increasing, inflammatory and especially digestive dysfunction, encapsulated in the thoracic ganglia of the body, which is
Yeah.
affecting cardiovascular function. And then, I mean, I'm seeing it already, also down into, tongue. The tongue of the mouth is storing it. The gum tissue is storing it. And so I'm starting to develop this whole new viewpoint, even on plaque and teeth and bacterial decay and such, that actually these things, what we're seeing and calling decay in the mouth, for example, may actually be evidence of leaching of these heavy metals that are actually deeply encapsulated in the gum tissue.
And
And just
and real quick,
yeah.
talk a little bit about where these are coming from, right? Like where is it that we're getting these heavy metals? Where is it that we're getting this onslaught of toxicity that you see, that the body then needs to encapsulate inside of all these fragile tissues within the body that shouldn't have the heavy metals and
Yeah.
whatnot. And I'll give you a follow-up question as well.
Yeah. So, absolutely. It's early on in life, and it's specifically, most likely, we can tie it to the childhood vaccine schedule.
Wow.
Yeah. And so then when that first initial exposure comes off, and we're even mapping this down even into the brachial plexus of the body, the arms, of course, the breast tissue. And if you think about where those shots most likely went in for most people. I mean, it gives a whole nother definition to why females, middle age start having all sorts of like, underarm saddlebag, retention of fat. Like, it doesn't matter how many push ups they do, there's still this encapsulated level of toxin that's hanging out beneath the arm that really was probably from some of the first inoculations that they received in these areas of their body, and then the most intense amount of those toxins traveled into the breast tissue, into the brachial plexus,
Wow.
up through the brain, central nervous system, peripheral nervous system. And we can see too how we're seeing how encapsulated toxins into the fingers and toes are presenting as skin issues. They're presenting as chronic herpes outbreaks. That's actually
Mm,
behind there, causing some of those distinctions of why some people can be exposed to that virus and not have a problem and others can't. And then even down to encapsulation in the peripheral nervous system, showing up as, some of the scleroderma conditions, Raynaud, Sjogren's, things like that, that
yeah.
are affecting circulation to the peripheral nervous in the fingers and toes, even. Joint pain, encapsulated toxins inside of joints. I mean, it's really like it's hard, you're hard pressed to
So
find where
it's
this
go ahead.
isn't going up. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kinda like any symptom that a person may have could be related to this encapsulated toxin, right?
Exactly,
And
and that's why I call it a pattern of unwellness, because it's almost like it seems like they're showing up sort of maybe based on some kind of genetic, profile for that individual where there's a weakness, and then it's just showing up in the areas where it was the most, like I said, in the example of going in the arms and then going into breast tissue, going into the brachial plexus of the body, into the thoracic ganglia. We can make cause for why encapsulated toxins that have damaged the epithelial tissue of the cardiovascular system may be causing the body to want to increase an output of cholesterol to go and try to constantly, repair that tissue, or
mm,
that the damaged tissue that just sits there. And, even thymus gland involvement, encapsulations in the thymus gland, which is underlying, a lot of immune system dysfunction, right? I mean, we can look at our statistics as a nation and see that our autoimmune rates are going like this, that our, neurodegenerative, conditions are going like this. I mean, you name it, and we've got this incredible amount of encapsulated toxicity that continues to leach. And where we're at as healthcare professionals, and where I was for a long time, was I call it that level 1 detox, where you're going in and you can assess that there's heavy metal toxicity present, BPA also. I'd put the plastics, those toxins into this category too. I think those are getting deeply encapsulated. But
And
your
your
own
body encapsulates it to protect itself.
exactly.
And
It's innate intelligence at work. Perfect in design. Super smart,
yeah.
right?
So
But it
should we worry about it?
should we worry? I think it's the utmost important thing that everyone needs to get rid of in their
If
body.
if it's encapsulated though, then I think some people
Mhm.
would argue like, "Oh, well, it's not
Well,
the body."
that's where I'm going next. So it's encapsulated, but it's not a complete encapsulation. It's constantly leaching into your bloodstream, into your body, which causes you to continue to have to manage these chronic or these inflammatory states of your body.
Mm,
And left unchecked, and specifically in your brain, and this is where a lot of, like, high performers need to pay attention to, because I think one of the reasons high performers got to the place where we are is that we do have a chronic upregulation of neural tissue. Makes us smarter. Makes us be able to have a bigger capacity for things. But it's also one of the worst sleeping giants, because a lot of times as we're aging, those unchecked encapsulated toxins are going to lead to situations where we're having neurodegenerative disorders, Alzheimer's, ALS, Parkinson's, and these toxins, the research is showing that these things are contributing to that. Now you have to dig for it, because not the local media isn't going to provide you with how ethyl mercury is a challenge for the body, but it's out there,
yeah.
and it's recognized as, and in particular, a lot of studies out there on methyl mercury, by the way, which would be like the type of mercury you might come across if you're eating fish. And, a lot of times that's the first thing people will say to me is, "Well, I eat fish. Should I stop eating fish?" And I'm like, "Listen, the mercury that you're exposed to in fish is not anywhere near the damage causing anywhere near the damage that the mercury that was injected into you has been doing." And there's actually even research on the differences between how methyl mercury is processed in the body, and it tends to stay more at the peripheral, of the body, so it's an easier one to catch, and then for you in a level 1 situation to actually do some kind of, binder chelator kind of detox for an individual.
So the
Um,
ethyl mercury is in the vaccines, it's in and I believe it's been taken out of the vaccines by RFK Jr., is it not?
well, I think that there was a mandate to do that a while back, but it's really, not certain by it doesn't seem to be it doesn't seem to be consensus that it's fully out of the supply of vaccines.
I see, yeah, because they print so many vaccines at the same time.
Well, and it's
Um,
in there to preserve them, so yeah,
right,
supposedly,
exactly.
yeah. Mhm.
And then the other question is, ethyl mercury then is way more neurodegenerative than methyl mercury, and methyl mercury stays, gets broken down in the liver. It doesn't there's not as it's not as much a scare, that can bioaccumulate in your brain and your body as ethyl mercury when it gets into the brain and body, right?
Yeah, via the bloodstream, via specifically an injection, right?
Yeah,
That's how anything would be delivered, more easily, more readily, even to the brain, would be through the bloodstream itself, yeah.
okay,
Mhm,
okay, great.
mhm. So, yeah, I mean, this is one of those things where it's like, as we've uncovered this, in the process of going from a level 1 stage, which is where a lot of practitioners are at, and they're doing great work, the dealing with the heavy metal toxin accumulation through peripheral, I call them peripheral now, levels of detox are helpful, right? But it becomes a case of long term, it becomes a case of management, ongoing management. And I started to see that clinically. It was like, okay, great. And it actually, the way I got to this, arrived at here myself,
Mhm.
was not just the desire to fix the seizures or to understand that better for my own self. It actually came to 5 years ago, or about when I was like, I had the worst body odor that I couldn't even, like, I couldn't even believe it, and not only that, then I started to have the worst itching armpits and rashes accumulating in my armpits,
Oh,
and what I didn't realize was that that was the signs of that encapsulation of heavy metal through my brachial plexus into my shoulder. Fast forward a couple years later, I was literally like this, where, like, the right side of my body was way more was, like, hardening and
wow.
starting to move in this, and then as I started to unwind this further, I started to see that the most of my brain damage actually that was precipitating the seizures was on the right side of my body, was on the right parietal area of my brain, and
Uh,
that was all fitting together. It would happen bilaterally, but it was worse on the right side, and that's where I get these awful headaches. A lot of women are describing those, the right-sided migraine types of patterns.
mm,
That's consistent with even, those types of scenarios will even show up on the EEGs, looking like the same brain waves as people with seizures too.
wow. Wow.
So, it's interesting because you can really make a case for, yeah, why this is involved. And I'm very much we all have individualized bodies and we need individualized approaches to, getting our health back. And I still believe that. And the interesting thing that I've discovered too is you can't get to this level of detox. You can't pluck somebody off the street and say, hey, I'm going to start detoxing the encapsulated heavy metal in your body today. That's not how this works.
So so why don't you talk about the resiliency method and how it works? Like, what tests do you do? What does the process look like? I know everyone's different, but, like, just generally speaking, what does that
Yeah,
look like? And then
absolutely.
how can ho like, maybe you tell us a little bit about the some of the results that you've seen?
Absolutely. So level 1 detox is still where we start phase 1, and I call it detox, but I would also throw in there, the addressing, doing parasite cleanses, dealing with stealth pathogens. An interesting one oftentimes that you can tell if somebody's, level 1 mercury or heavy metal is too high in their body, they'll often present with fungus. And so, in this scenario I'm describing, that patient, if they never get beyond, and I call level 1 kindergarten, if they never get beyond kindergarten, end up becoming a case where you're just managing the reoccurrence of the fungus, the candida, in their system because there's still the encapsulated heavy metal that's leaching, right? But it's still important to do. You gotta do that level 1 detox. You gotta do the parasite cleansing. But where I was stuck for many years, and I know where a lot of practitioners are stuck today, is they just keep repeating phase 1. So everybody gets excited because even in a phase 1 or a level 1 kindergarten approach, you still are getting great results with people, which is fantastic. And we can see some of those, lab testing that we can look at a total tox burden. We can see the data there that can back it up. We can see the leaky gut, the symptoms of the leaky gut, looking at, the testing, the gut zoomer from is one that we use oftentimes in that process, right? But ultimately, what we need to do is also stop the parasite reinfection and reinfestation, which is an area where if you are a clinician and you are getting to that level of depth with your patients, a lot of practitioners are staying there, and I was one of them for many years. Well, this is where the Chinese medicine kind of background comes in and discrepancy, and something that I always had a little trouble with having my extensive knowledge and training in Chinese herbology was that all herbs have a certain type of like temperature. They also have a certain direction that they go in. This is what you kind of learn when you're studying the field of herbs and herbology. And anti-parasite herbs are really cold in nature. And the problem with that is that when you have somebody that has chronic parasite infections, oftentimes you have a underlying tissue organ or, gland deficiency in the body, right? And so what you end up doing is you end up taking that deficiency where in the Chinese medicine perspective, we look at a deficiency pattern as having cold retention. So literally cold. And what Chinese meant by that was just a lack of blood supply.
Yeah,
You
to
can't
to an organ.
yeah, you can't get enough blood in there to heat and create enough, blood cell white blood cell repair to the organ, tissue, or
Mm,
gland over time, right?
that's
And a
good.
lot of and that sometimes stems from the fact that, the body will encapsulate parasites too, by the way. But when you keep doing that over and over again, you never get off that merry-go-round of kill, 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 detox, detox, detox.
Mm,
Okay. And you keep throwing cold herbs at the body, aggravating the chronic deficiency pattern
mm,
that's below it, right? So what we did is that we saw there was an opportunity to get to, I call it junior high or level two, which is phase two of our program. And that was to then clear out mycoplasma, identify where mycoplasma was sitting in the body and clear that out. And when that happened, then we saw the parasite reinfestation stop,
mm,
and at least enough to where we could continue to move forward and get off that recycling of antiparasitic cleanses and heavy metal detoxes at a tissue level.
mm.
So that was significant. That was also significant for Lyme patients because they also have a lot of accumulation. They also have parasites. They also have heavy metals, right? So a lot of Lyme patients started to get sustainably well, and we weren't just managing the in you know
And again, the reason being is because you stopped from a Chinese medicine perspective, you stopped throwing just cold herbs at the problem, and you started supporting the organs the way that they needed to be supported depending.
Almost. Yeah, well, ultimately, what my working operational theory on this, and it may or may not be 100% correct, I'll admit it, is, I think we're actually eliminating the eggs, potentially, or we're bringing by
And what she means by eggs is the actual eggs that the parasites.
yes,
'Cause
yes,
I did a liver fluke, cleanse, and I didn't actually believe I had them.
yeah,
And I got rid of them,
yeah,
and it was awesome. Like, I could
yeah,
literally I felt completely different. I was like, "Oh my gosh, that is absolutely disgusting. I can't believe that I had liver flukes."
yeah,
But I was muscle tested by 2 separate people on 2 separate sides of the room. They were the best people in the room, and, I was like, and I don't know if you know Todd, and then, was it what's his name? You'd know him, from Michigan. Anyways, it'll come to me.
Darren,
Yeah, Darren, yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it was like both of them, but they're on the
yeah,
other side of the room,
yeah,
and I was like they went through like 100 vials. I'm like, "There's no way they're gonna have the same." And they're like, "You don't have any problems, but you have liver flukes."
yeah.
And then the other guy said, "You don't have any problems, but you have a liver fluke."
Yeah,
And I
and
was
I told
like,
you, like, 4 years ago when I first met you
"Yeah,
that
you probably
that's
did." I was in denial though. I probably repressed even you saying that to me. It's disgusting. So anyways, I cleansed and I got rid of all of them and
yeah,
I felt a lot better, but I honestly, like, I felt them recently coming back, like,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, and
yeah,
you've got no neural tissue in your like, you don't have, like, a nociception in your liver, so it's I think it's, like, inflammation that's, like, putting pressure on the capsule around my liver right now
yeah,
that's caused it, and I'm like, "How the heck did these flukes come back? Because I crushed them."
yeah.
And then it's like you said, it's probably the eggs, right?
Yep, yep, and I think too, it could just literally be mycoplasma because we all are carrying a fair amount of mycoplasma around, and mycoplasma, as it's eliminating from the body, is very sticky, so, it's a form of phlegm, type of material, and the body, creates it, and really, actually, I have a guide on this too that, it's really believed that the typical definition of mycoplasma that you'll hear in the literature is that it's just bacterial in nature, but, there's some recognition that actually that this may have something to do with how we can it's called polymorphism why how like a bacteria can actually become a parasite and kind of over my expertise level but that has something to do with they're starting to recognize mycoplasma as having something to do with parasites as well. So I
Yeah.
think that just goes to my point, but then ultimately when we did that the other thing that started to happen was Oh my gosh, we saw if we introduced a low weight molecular collagen in the picture and did some initial gut repair. Well, by and large, now we started seeing the food sensitivities reverse, and not through desensitization techniques, but actual through gut repair. And
Yeah.
I was one of them, Isaac. I could not eat gluten or wheat
That's
worth anything.
crazy. The same thing has happened to me. I have stopped being sensitive to all these different foods that I was sensitive to before, and I didn't connect it to the hydrogen therapy, but that was one thing that I was doing.
So hydrogen actually may be helping to eliminate some of the mycoplasma. Yeah.
Mm.
So we saw that starting to happen, which was incredible. And I want to come
And
back to
you said it was actually reversing food sensitivities not through something, but through hydrogen, right? Like completely reversing it. What
well,
was that
through
for?
the no, it's not the hydrogen, the collagen, a low molecular weight collagen, so highly absorbable form of collagen as a supplement. You
Got
drink
it.
it. Yep. And it's a patented formula, it's excellent, and introduced at the right time, though, because I always tell people, "Don't start collagen when you're in phase 1." It's almost like you have a tornado going on in your gut, and what are you supposed to do when the tornado comes through? You're not supposed to close your windows, you're supposed to open them. Well, that's the same thing we wanna do inside the gut, right? We don't wanna shut the windows too soon, and using a collagen-based product is really most of the powders, quite frankly, don't think they do much, so you're probably not doing harm if you're taking a powder collagen. You're just not really getting a benefit from it. But ultimately, if you use that strategically at the right time, you close those windows of the gut wall, and then you start seeing some of the improvement with the food and the reversal of the food sensitivities. Because, hey guys, I'm sorry, this might be so disruptive, but we were never designed to be allergic to our food. Okay. And I know that's hard for a lot of practitioners, that are themselves eating like 5 foods.
Yeah.
Um, but we really weren't designed that way. We just haven't gone far enough. And I want to introduce too in this conversation, too. I mentioned it earlier when we were talking about encapsulation, is the thymus gland involvement. So that's the other thing that I want to give credit to. In phase 1, we're also paying particular attention to the thymus gland and supporting it. In phase 2, we're paying particular attention to the thymus gland and supporting it. In phase 3, we're paying attention to the thymus gland and supporting it. And that is key to that improvement with the immune system, especially the long-term immune system.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, up until just, I remember 5 years ago reading, if you looked up anything on Doctor Google about the thymus gland, it'd be like, "Oh, never mind, it's not that important. It's just this, it just, atrophies past adolescence. You don't need it anymore." Meanwhile, our autoimmune rates are going like this, and I'm going, "That doesn't make sense." Like that, those 2 things don't really so
Right.
I always was a skeptical about it, and then I started seeing clinically, like, if I paid more attention to it, and specifically with the use of analyzing it more at a deeper level, that made a huge difference to granting us access into deeper levels of work with the body. So
Wow.
that's junior high, and that's the first part of junior high. The second part of junior high, or level 2, phase 2, is dealing with cellular mold in the body, and all of us have it, and all of us have been exposed to environmental mold and toxins in our environment. But some of the part where it's coming from is on the cell lines from reproducing with mold in our cell lines, and that's causing a level of cellular inflammation in our bodies. And if we detox that, now we're at senior high and we're in phase 3 or level 3, and that's where we start to do really the complete was kind of where we've completed the majority or the big parts of fill the dumpster phase, what I call it, and then we can start repairing. So at this phase, in phase 3, we start doing organ and tissue and gland repair. I should also mention we're like I mentioned, we're paying attention to the thymus gland throughout the entire process. We're also paying attention to the mitochondria because a lot of practitioners are getting, tripped up on having, they can't get their patients to heal effectively because their mitochondria is so trashed from all of these things that they can't get enough energy at a deeper level to keep
Mm,
the train moving forward on the tracks. So we've
yeah.
got a systemized way of analyzing that so that gets accounted for throughout the process, and that just keeps introducing more efficiency and faster results and then more depth in the healing process itself. Now, coming back to where we started, which is that encapsulated toxin situation. I mentioned to you, you can't pull somebody off the street and start dealing with encapsulated toxins. However, this is interesting. What we saw is that once we built up the organ tissues, glands, the mitochondria efficiently and effectively enough, now we had a quote unquote earned the right to have the body say, "Oh, this looks safer out here. Hmm, maybe I'll start to," and we introduced, by the way, the inhalation therapy of the hydroheal, of the molecular hydrogen.
Yep.
Inhalation,
Right
not
here.
drinking it. Inhalation. Everybody always asks me, "Can I drink it?" No, inhalation of that. And
Why not drink it? Why not drink
it doesn't have the same effect. It's just only going through the digestive organs. It wasn't really seemingly having the same effect, and here's probably why. Let's discuss the mechanisms at play here. That encapsulation, from a Chinese medicine perspective, we call that phlegm, and so that's encapsulated. So think, lipomas, fatty, certainly along the brain and nervous system. You have a lot of encapsulation being used with fat tissue. You have that also in the liver. So
What do you think about GLP-1s then? Do you think it's just like really bad because people take GLP-1s and then they're just releasing all these toxins?
yes, I do think that that can happen. Yeah, I do think that that's a good mechanism at play. Probably, Isaac, what you're suggesting there, because the reason they need the GLP-1 in the first place is because of the issue with the fatty liver, the non-alcoholic fatty liver, and that is really encapsulated aluminum and mercury in the liver from that early exposure, is what we're seeing, and the body will start to open up all of these gradiently over time. And you want to know the coolest part? When we're detoxing at this level, we're not using chelators and binders. We're using B vitamins, increasing B vitamins, minerals, and fatty acids. And those are the things that our ancestors detox with, Isaac. They ate the whole animal. They killed the animal and then they ate that, and that's how they kept themselves.
You said minerals, vitamins. You're not using chelators. You're using chelators maybe in phase 1 and 2.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Mhm.
But once you hit phase 3, senior high, your organ, tissue, glands repaired, your body's innate intelligence opens up the phlegm
Even more. Yeah. Yep.
even more, which then allows for the encapsulated toxins to come out.
Yep, and so
And
yeah, as they're releasing, we're just supporting, so at different times, especially because a lot of it's in the nervous system, we'll just support. We do use NAC too to help liver out, during that time period as well, but, we'll just simply allow the body to kinda lead, like, what it can do, right? And
yeah,
we'll just kind of facilitate and guide the process. So, like, when we're using the, hydrogen at this stage, we have to use it, minimally at times because you don't wanna push this too fast either. You don't wanna force the body to do this, you want the body to sort of take the lead and allow these things to gradiently come out and process it. We're
mm,
using Epsom salt baths a lot when it comes to especially mercury. But to mention, like you talked about the some of the clinical, like, results we're seeing. Well, one thing that comes off the top of my mind is, one woman came after we had, detoxed, the, um, the aluminum from her tongue. She went to the dentist shortly after, and she was using the inhalation of the hydrogen as well while we were supporting her body through her supplement program. And, the dentist is like, "You always have plaque on your teeth, and you have, like, no plaque on your teeth, and it's been more than 6 months," or it had been, like, 9 months since she had been to the dentist, and she's like, "Has to be irregular." And they were like, what? And then we've seen improved HRV scores because encapsulation's also happening on the vagus nerve. So we're doing a ton of repair as well with the and support for the vagus nerve at
Wow.
this stage. And that's a game changer for longevity, as you know, too, because the vagus nerve, there's almost like nothing in the respect to the hallmarks of aging that the vagus nerve doesn't have a hand in.
Wow.
So really
Yeah.
important piece for the longevity aspect. Of course, getting heavy metal out of your brain. I have one patient that probably should, be dead by now. And I say that because his daughter, who's been bringing him to me for the last several years, has would probably say the same thing. And we, at first, were just managing him, like I said, because I was mostly start with him at a level one, right? And then as I started to open this up, we got to level three, and Isaac is like his lights went back on. And I saw it in his eyes when she brought him in one day. I'm like, something shifted there. And then, within a couple months, she's telling me stories about how he's reading off the menu, making decisions about the menu. He still doesn't have the facial recognition piece back yet, but we're not done. And so I'm
That's great.
excited to see what's going to transpire with that particular case. But ultimately, I'm finding a lot of people have encapsulated mercury at the top of their, excuse me, aluminum, and particularly up the top of their cortex there, which are some of the centers for where the Alzheimer patterns or dementia patterns are setting forth from. And we're getting that headed off for them. We're
Wow.
we're dealing with that now when they're in their 40s.
How can you how can you test to know that there's aluminum in the top part of the brain, for instance?
Well, we'll use our muscle testing procedures to identify where these
Okay.
things are
And you
encapsulated.
can do
Where
that virtually?
Yeah, we do it virtually as well. It works just as well.
That's great. And so phase one's kindergarten, heavy metals, toxins. Phase two's junior high, biotoxins, parasites. Phase three is senior high, organ, tissue, gland repair, upgrading efficiency. Is that a good summary?
Yeah, encapsulated toxins. Yeah.
And then yeah, then you can get to the encapsulated toxins. And you're not using chelators, you're using vitamins, minerals, and what else?
We're using we use all the gamut really, in level 1, we're using homeopathy, we're using herbs, we're using, chelators, binders. Level 2, we're using binders. A lot of the fulvic acid, we use, the humic and fulvic acid supplements, we use the carbon-based technology. We've got that in level 2. Always we're supporting drainage, always we're supporting the thymus gland. Um Always we're assessing the thyroid gland. Poor little thyroid gets beat up because this is like a narrow passageway. So we're unwinding some of the chronic patterns with the thyroid situation and why they never can come off the medication fully. That
Wow.
has a lot of to do with the encapsulation of the cervical ganglia.
Wow.
And the thoracic ganglia, the encapsulation is affecting the heart, the cardiovascular function for people, as I mentioned earlier. But we're using whole food, primarily whole food supplements in phase three. We use whole food throughout, but for shorter periods of time, because in phases one and two, you're really just boosting, like I said, mitochondria and or the organ tissue just to keep promoting the body moving forward in the healing process. When we get
Yeah.
to level three, it's ready to take those things on and have those stay in for more duration. So we end up using a lot of protomorphogens from standard process, which are
Yeah.
incredible for doing that repair work that we need to get done.
Wow.
And then we're using some synthetics, but for shorter duration. We'll use nutraceuticals like NAC to help promote glutathione production. But we're seeing, again, the repair of the spleen and angelic
Wow.
encapsulations in the liver. That's a game changer for metabolic function. That's a game changer for weight loss. We're
Yeah.
encapsulating a lot of this stuff in our fat cells. So
Wow.
we're just starting to see
It's
the
amazing.
the the impact of this and how this is really showing up in a lot of different ways for
Wow.
people.
So,
So
Dr. Erica, I have to go in 1 minute
yeah.
from now. So, I would love for you to share where they can learn more about you and sign up to work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. In the show notes, down there's going to be a couple guides I'm going to leave for you all. The longevity guide for practitioners, which is a little bit more techy, talking about some of this encapsulated scenario. I'll leave one in there probably too for just health consumers, and then also the show notes will give information on how to reach us, and then you can follow us. I do a podcast, The Resiliency Method: The Truth About Healing. Follow us on your favorite podcast.
Thank you so much, Dr. Erika. Appreciate your
Thank
time
you
today.
for the time.
My pleasure. Thanks for listening to the Longevity Leaders podcast. Our Longevity Leaders community is on mission to transform 100 million lives by 2040. If you enjoyed this show, please share this with somebody that you know, especially another doctor or physician, but also click that follow button. Until next time, stay strong and live long.